listen, because government had no capacity to enforce any of this. You must wear a mask. And people wore masks in New York. But if they said, I'm not wearing a mask, there was nothing I could do about it. Society acted with that uniformity voluntarily.
Here's what matters to me about the clip. Apology? Of course not.
They're going to be like, if you mention him on the show, I'm going to have to deal with it and call a security guard. We're going to get phone calls. We're going to get emails. And then we're going to have to call the police. Then we're going to have a security guard 24 hours. That's going to cost, like, big shows. If you're talking about 24-hour security.
What's going on, everybody? Did you notice that they're telling a lot of truth about COVID this week? Chris Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo, the media. They're coming out and they're saying a lot of stuff that you weren't allowed to say for years. So we're going to do a few things. First of all, ask the question, why? Why now? Why this week? Why does it seem like there's a coordinated effort to speak about all these things that were swept under the rug for years? We're going to talk about it. We're going to show clips of the Cuomo brothers being super sneaky, in specific, Andrew Cuomo, who came out, the governor of New York, and he basically said, these mandates were unenforceable. People followed it. If people didn't trust the government and people didn't follow it, I couldn't have done anything. This didn't seem to be the messaging back then, but it is now. Then at the end, if we have time, which we will, because I make the time, it's not a show that needs to stop at a certain point. I don't know why I said that, but I want to play this clip of Tim Pool and just show how he's being super sneaky on this topic, which is weird. And I wanted to talk about it. It's my show, so I picked that topic. Appreciate you guys. God bless you. Dream Rare podcast starts now. Give me a thumbs up in the chat and in the video for the algorithms. Appreciate you guys.
It's the Dream Rare podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. Yeah.
What's going on, everybody? Somebody said great clickbait title. It's not clickbait. I mean, it's literally, I'm going to cover all the topics. I'm not just saying it. So let me cover the first one real quick, because they're pulling the AstraZeneca vaccine off the market, which it was not popular in America, but around the world, I think it was one of the most popular vaccines for Europe, Australia, and others. I can't speak specifically, but it was one of the most popular vaccines, just not in America. Here's the headlines. And one thing that I noticed looking it up is everybody's saying different stuff. It's not like they're all saying the same reason for why it was pulled. I found at least 3 different reasons for why they say they're pulling the vaccine, if not 4. Let's look at it. CNN said AstraZeneca withdraws COVID-19 vaccine citing low demand. Guardian said AstraZeneca withdraws COVID-19 worldwide citing a surplus of a newer vaccine. Fierce Pharma says the EMA suspends AstraZeneca's marketing authorization for the COVID vaccine. So that's 3 different reasons. They lost their authorization for it. They withdrew because there's newer vaccine. They have low demand. And then I found this in the Independent. It says AstraZeneca withdraws from COVID vaccine worldwide after admitting it can cause rare blood clots. So that's 3 different reasons for why it was pulled. If Fierce Pharma is right, which they probably are, and that the EMA, the emergency, and I don't know if that's in England or maybe in a certain, I would have to look it up. But if the authorization was pulled, I don't want to talk about this too much because I've talked about it. I probably have over 100 videos of it from 2020 to 2021. But if you really study, I could specifically speak for America. So this is separate from the AstraZeneca, but I'm guessing certain countries have similar rules. There's a lot of liability shields, and it seems like if the pharmaceutical industry doesn't have the liability shield, then they're not able to push the vaccines as quickly. So in America, you'll see now Chris Cuomo is now talking about ivermectin and all these drugs, that horse paste, as they said with Joe Rogan, and he's admitting that there's certain doctors telling him that that's what they were doing, blah, blah, blah. Like he's having these conversations that a lot of conservatives were having in 2020 and Joe Rogan had in 2020 or 2021. And it's like, why now? If they would have said that that drug worked in 2020, the emergency use authorization would have not have worked. These COVID vaccines only were able to be rushed to the public for multiple reasons. This is what happens. I'm not trying to sound condescending about this. Sorry, I'm self-aware. I sound a little douchey the way I'm saying it. Let me try to say it in a nicer tone. Maybe not. Maybe I don't have that inside me right now. But anyway, It's like everybody that follows, like, oh, maybe it was this or that, or Trump has it. It's like they're not following what really happened, the legislation, why it was rushed, et cetera. They're trying to justify it because they like a politician or they want this one, and it never made sense. Like the reporting around this was so trash. Obviously, in Democrat media, it was dookie, but even in Republican media, it was so horrific how people reported, because we don't have a lot of journalists and serious analysts. We just have professional pom-pom team players, and a lot of these people got this extraordinarily wrong. But the reason it was able to be rushed were two main reasons. There was an emergency that was declared by the HHS. HHS was led by a pharmaceutical CEO or a pharmaceutical executive who worked for Eli Lilly, Alex Azar. Maybe not the CEO, but an executive looking to Alex Azar. He declared the emergency. Once the emergency is declared, they have emergency, Operation Warp Speed funding. They use it to justify all these crazy bills that no one would ever be able to stomach normally, or maybe they would because no one in this country seems to notice. But anyway, once they rushed Operation Warp Speed, if there's another drug that works, you can't warp speed a new vaccine because the emergency use authorization only works if it's the only available drug, or else you're not supposed to just rush a drug like that. So if they would have said, I'm not saying it did work, I'm not a doctor and I never took this drug and I don't, care for pharmaceuticals that much to really, ever advocate. I'm not an advocate to tell people to take stuff, but in general, if ivermectin would have been a drug that they wanted to use, now the vaccines are irrelevant, and now the emergency use authorization didn't work. So the reason Chris Cuomo is talking about it now doesn't matter anymore. I believe they've moved over to FDA approval for some of the vaccines. When it comes to the emergency, whatever they do in other countries for AstraZeneca, it's like they lost that. Now they pull the thing. Now they say it's for low demand. Is it the rare side effect? Is it the low demand? Is it the new vaccine? Who knows? Who cares? They'll give you 4 different reasons. And now all these media talking heads will come out. One of them's been rebranded as independent media, Chris Cuomo. And they're going to be like, oh yeah, let's talk about the alternate drugs now. It doesn't matter now because it mattered when they were rolling out the vaccine. And I believe that's the reason that Trump stopped talking about the alternate medications as well, because he only talked about them until Operation Warp Speed started getting closer. Then he never mentioned those drugs again and moved to the vaccine because someone near him probably told him, Trump, you got to shut up about ivermectin, because if you can prove, or anybody can prove, that actually is a suitable defense against COVID-19, then the vaccines lose their emergency use authorization. And Trump, you got to remember, is the father of the vaccine. He's very proud of it. He's a huge influential role in why we got it. He credits himself. He says he pushed the FDA to rush it even faster. He had a meeting with Bill Gates in 2018 about a universal flu vaccine, passed an executive order in 2019. Donald Trump is the father of the vaccine. So as soon as he probably realized, I can't talk about alternate medications because God forbid they actually are, proven that they work or that they're useful, then the vaccine won't go through. Do you think, this doesn't even really need to be reported by me. I'm just going to ask it via questions that Ben Shapiro and the Babylon Bee mysteriously hate now because questions are just suggesting or whatever. But it's like, do you think the pharmaceutical industry would allow a multi-billion-dollar, you think they'd fund the pharmaceutical industry $18 billion, realized an alternate drug worked, and be like, you know what, let's just forget about that like $50 billion of profit we were going to make, or $100 billion of profit over the next decade or more. Let's forget about that. Let's use this really cheap drug that's widely available, that already has won a Nobel Prize and it's patented and it's not just for horses. Let's use that one and lose out on all the money we're going to make. And keep in mind, Moderna, I believe, was suing Pfizer over the patent for part of how the vaccine worked that they had been working on for a decade. There's lawsuits where Moderna, and also apparently Moderna was joint owned by the government. That's why when Ivanka Trump was like, she tweeted out one time, she's like, Trump's been working on this before the pandemic. And everyone pointed to it as proof of like conspiracy or whatever. But it's like, yeah, Trump is the father of the vaccine. He absolutely was working with it. And it wasn't just Trump. It was a government owned product that is now suing for the profits that Pfizer made. I could talk about this all day. I've made hundreds of videos about it. I covered it thoroughly and accurately in 2020 and 2021. Unlike Ben Shapiro, Chris Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo, or any of the other people that call themselves Democrats and Republicans and trick you guys, I don't have to apologize, or I don't have to go backtrack and say I was wrong and I got tricked by Pfizer and the government, because I never did. And pretty much every video I made in 2020 and 2021, if you happen to want to go backtrack, everything I said still stands to this day, because I'm a good journalist and I'm not a phony and I have no bias. And I reported it accurately without putting my bias or pretending like I was a doctor in it. I never told people to take something or not to take something. I simply gave people the truth. A lot of these people didn't do that. So all I'm going to say is, why do I think that now Chris Cuomo is allowed to talk about ivermectin? Because the emergency use authorization has gone past its use. They're moving it over to other liability shields under the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, and probably, giving it FDA approval in some cases. So they don't need what they needed before. So now if people talk about that drug, well, they already cashed out. AstraZeneca, cash out, peace out. Deuces, did social media work with governments and pharmaceutical industries to silence you for 3 years? Yep. But they cashed out. Deuces, you know what I'm saying? Cash out, pull out. Cash out, tell the people to Drew 3 years later. I'm just going to say this. It doesn't need to be said. But you're an absolute fool if you think that these people just made a mistake. You're an absolute fool if you think it took 3 years for them to figure out the science. You're an absolute fool, if you think Governor Cuomo and Chris Cuomo really care now. Like, you're a fool. These people are not making mistakes. You know what I'm saying? They're playing a game, and they played the game successfully. Lockdowns worked. Mandates for the most part worked. The big pharma made an absolute fortune. The government made an absolute fortune. God knows who's making what money when we send it to foreign countries. We've sent hundreds of billions of dollars to foreign countries recently. Who knows where that money's going, or who's getting it, or who's auditing it? It's not the Pentagon, because every time the Pentagon gets audited, they fail it to the tune of trillions of dollars, but no one seems to notice. And, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, I want to play this clip of Andrew Cuomo. And, credit to Quake Media, whatever that is. They did the interview. I wanted to speed it up so I didn't get copyright stricken, and I hope I don't. But I wanted Andrew's actual tone, so I didn't speed this up. Hopefully I don't get a copyright strike. I mean, I do have Fair Use Act, but YouTube and Facebook doesn't seem to care. Anyway, listen to the audacity and the hubris of this guy. He's now gaslighting you into being like, you never had to listen to me. You never had to listen to the mandate, which is actually true. I mean, he's not technically wrong here, but like, is this the message you got from the state of New York during mandates? Like, they were going batshit insane on everybody all the time. And listen to what they say now. Isn't it crazy that these people who shamed us and mocked us and called us names for 3 years, now they sound like us? Now they're saying the same thing we did. It's not a coincidence. They cashed out. They did everything they had to do because they needed to do it within a specific time period. And now they're out here sounding exactly like this. I despise the Cuomo brothers. I'll forgive them. I'm very Christ-like, not really. I don't really forgive them. Sorry, but I try to be like Christ. I fall short, but I would forgive them if they were truly sorry. Let's put it that way. If they were truly sorry and wanted to repent, I'd forgive them. I don't, because they're not even asking for an apology, but here's the clip. Sorry.
I believe if government were to now say, we just made a finding that there's a new virus and everyone should do X, Y, and Z, the amount of compliance with X, Y, and Z would be much, much lower than it was at the beginning of COVID, because people do not trust the government, especially on this issue, the way they did at the beginning. And that would be a complicating factor, right? When you have people who just don't listen.
All right, so I'm going to play the second clip. It's like, this is crazy what he says.
Because government had no capacity to enforce any of this. You must wear a mask. And people wore masks in New York. But if they said, I'm not wearing a mask, there was nothing I could do about it. You must close your private business. I won't. Well, there was nothing I could really do about it. It was really all voluntary, and it was extraordinary when you think about it, that society acted with that uniformity voluntarily, because I had no enforcement capacity. So you have a reduced trust in government.
Can you believe that? He's like, if you didn't want to close your business, you didn't have to. I agree with him that people should have not listened. People should have defied. People should have stood up for themselves. I was saying it the entire time. I gave a lot of props to restaurants like Basilico's that never shut down. But here's the thing. They've gotten fined for doing that. I can't speak for New York, but I know the owner of Basilico's, and, he, I believe, got a fine where they took money out of his bank account. So he defied. He doesn't complain about it. He stood firm. But there was a price to pay. And I'm not saying he shouldn't have done it. He stands by what he did. He's a legend. But it's like now they're trying to gaslight people into two things. One, you didn't really have to listen, which is in some ways true, but this is not what they were saying 3 years ago. They were lying to you for 3 years. And now they're like, oh yeah, I'm just like every other, quote unquote conspiracy theorist. Where like, you didn't have to listen to the government. You wanted to, you trusted us. Like, you trusted us with the mask. You trusted us. And in some ways, what's gross about it is not that he's wrong about that. It's the fact that that's not what they were telling you for 3 years. But yeah, that's what people should have done. But the thing is, there is a price to be paid. And I'm not saying I think it's worth it for your freedom and liberty. But this idea that if everyone didn't listen, nothing would happen. In some cases, yeah, all you had to do is not listen and nothing would have happened. I've seen it happen so many times. My friend said, I'm not getting the vaccine. And they said, well, you're fired, and then they pressured him 50 times. And the second that he stepped down, like right before he was about to leave, they were like, do you want your job back? It was like a humiliation ritual. They're like, we're going to try to crush you and ruin your life. And the second, well, if you say no to us 50 times, it's like a secret door opens and we say, actually come back in. So they put people through a real psychological test. I never caved on the COVID vaccine. I never got it. I reported on it from March, April, May, June, July. I predicted mandatory vaccines in 2019. I saw right through this. Luckily, a friend of mine years ago named Lara, she showed me RFK's videos like 2018, 2019. I looked into vaccine manufacture, how the vaccine manufacturers are protected through liability shields. RFK has been explaining it for years. That's why I knew what I knew in order to tell people early on in 2020, because RFK is a great orator of that topic. He explains it extremely well. And that's why people like RFK. I mean, he's a wealth of knowledge. He wrote a whole book on the corruption of Anthony Fauci. He's a smart guy. Like he's definitely worth listening to, even if you don't want to vote for him, because he knows a lot, especially about that topic. With that being said, now they're coming out being like, you didn't have to listen. It's disgusting. I don't even want to listen to Chris Cuomo. I chopped up a small clip and put it on Twitter of him saying he's not sorry. Like he's basically saying sorry without saying sorry. And he's like, yeah, Joe Rogan, I'm doing it, but like, it's not. And it's like, I don't want to listen to this guy. And, I don't want to make it too personal, but it's like, with PBD, it's like he hired Chris Cuomo. We were in talks. He was like, yeah, I don't want to work with, or, it's not the right time for our relationship. And it's fine. I do my own work. I'm fine. But it's like, to me, that says a lot about somebody, that they're going to hire a failed Democrat CNN shill, and now he's going to rebrand himself as fake opposition media. To me, I don't want to watch that because I don't want to support it. If Patrick has good guests on and if Patrick hires good people, even if it's not me, I want to support the show. But to me, it's all dollar signs. And if people just get mad at Chris Cuomo and watch his show, he's going to keep doing it because he cares about money. Clearly not good journalism or people who got COVID right. He's totally fine with doling out his money and giving a platform to somebody who's disgusting. So, people think they're going to hate watch it and they're like, oh, I hate Chris Cuomo. Yeah, that's money for that podcast. So if you want to incentivize greatness and good journalism and hiring good people, stop giving your attention to and money to people that are totally fine with taking a failed CNN host. CNN doesn't even want Chris Cuomo. No mainstream media wanted Chris Cuomo. He was like dead in the water as far as his career. And now he's going to be rebranded as some moderate person, giving people info 3 years too late for all the wrong reasons. And now he's going to use your trust to probably sell another fake war in the Middle East that your taxpayer dollars are going to be funded, because that's what they do. It's like 3 years too late. Oh, I was wrong. Trust me now. And then they're going to lead you right to the next slaughter as soon as the next thing happens. Because Chris Cuomo, he's not like a rehabilitated saint now. He's a guy who is desperate and only, could work in certain places. But anyway, I think I'm more disgusted by what Andrew Cuomo said, who was the governor at the time, just being like, you didn't have to listen. You didn't have to follow this. Meanwhile, they were persecuting people who didn't. But there's a lesson there for everybody. And this is a tough lesson to swallow because it was really difficult. It was a really difficult time. It was very confusing. They used left wing, they used right wing, they used Donald Trump, they used 15 days to slow the spread, they used false paradigms, they used a virus, they used China versus America, the China, you know what I'm saying? They used a lot, and that's why you got to really pay attention, because if you think left versus right, you're going to get tricked by your own people. I want to use this example, not to be hateful, but to point out why I wish conservative media was a little bit smarter and had better guests at the time. Dan Bongino, I watched his reasoning. He said getting the vaccine was the worst mistake of his life. And he explained that the reason he got it is because he thought that the virus was Chinese. Might have been. I'm just saying he thought the virus was Chinese and the pharmaceutical products were American, and America is going to beat the China virus. Like, that was his logic. And if that was his logic, I can only guess that's what he was telling his audience at the time. I mean, I don't know. I don't watch Dan Bongino. I have no idea what he was saying during the pandemic. But like, if his thought process was like America beats China and that's why he made, in his words, the worst mistake of his life, it's not to sit here and mock people. It's just to be like, can we please have real discussions? Because these same mistakes people are making about COVID, they're making about the wars. They're making about foreign aid. It's not like they just make one mistake and then everything else they got right. If you're so foolish that you get tricked on this, what else are you getting tricked on? It's called, not having good discernment. So it's like with me, I can explain why I knew all this stuff. I understood vaccine liabilities. I've looked into the history of Pfizer. I studied what Operation Warp Speed was, and I knew the liability shields. And to me, it was like pretty easy to figure out what's going on. It's like, okay, they're going to make a fortune off of vaccine. So they don't want alternate medications to come out because then the vaccine can't make money. There's a 0% chance that they're going to allow any alternative medication to come out and destroy this massive cash cow that they've been building for years. Trump, look all this stuff up. He had a meeting with Bill Gates in 2018. 2018, okay? And then Bill Gates came to the press and he said, Trump tried to hire me as a science advisor. I told Trump about a universal flu vaccine. Bill Gates told the press, roughly, it's not quoted, but roughly, don't you want to be the science guy, Donald Trump? Don't you want to be known as this great scientific achievement for this universal flu vaccine? And then in 2019, Trump passes a universal flu vaccine executive order, which establishes a task force and brings together like 8 government agencies, including Department of Homeland Security, DOD, like all these agencies for a vaccine. What? A task force with like, why does the Department of Homeland Security and the DOD and all I think you could look at the list. It's shocking. Just look at the executive order. It's like, what? For a vaccine? What's going on here? There's a reason Trump is so proud of it. He's in on it. It's like, wait until Trump supporters figure out that he's not fighting Fauci or fighting Bill Gates or fighting Lindsey Graham. He's actually working with all of them. Trump is the perfect controlled opposition, because if he was like Mitt Romney, everyone would see through it. If he was like Mike Johnson, everyone would see through it. But Donald Trump's the perfect fake opposition because he puts on this little shtick that he's so different while the media constantly persecutes him and they persecute him. So you never study what's really going on. You just study surface level what around the corners. And my point of saying all this is like, all this stuff was so obvious in 2020, so obvious in 2021, so obvious in 2022. I'm not asking for a medal or an award or anybody's praise, but there's a reason I was right and there's a reason a lot of people were wrong. And the same reason I was right then is the same reason I'm right on other topics. And it's the same reason they're wrong. They're ignorant, they're foolish, they have bad discernment, or they're fake, or their political idol worship is so strong that they don't pay attention and do good journalism. You could pick a multitude of things, but it's like, I hope people see who was early on this stuff, including the speech laws and this. Ask yourself why. And then follow people and listen to people that have a track record of being right, not wrong. Because now everybody's going to come out and say these things. Everybody's going to admit what we admitted in 2020. It's not because they're mysteriously awesome. It's because now there's no consequences for it. And that's the same thing with the speech laws. I know Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk, they knew about this in 2019. You think Charlie Kirk just figured out about this in 2024? I watched him do everything that he could to run around and try to paint it as us versus them and say that them was like the hateful crowd of people who were too far right, who were talking about topics that Charlie didn't want to talk about in 2019. And one of the topics was the hate speech law. So I know, he didn't just figure it out now. It's just now it's safe to talk about. Now it's politically convenient. You might not lose what you would have lost then to talk about. So me personally, I can't speak for everybody. Why would I listen to a fake person? Why would I listen to a fake podcast or a guy that's controlled by donors or a political tool? Like, is that why anyone watches the news and podcasts? It's like, hey, lie to me because I like your personality, and then I'll find out the truth in 5 years. Me, I respect myself. I respect my intelligence to be like, yeah, that's not why I listen to podcasts. I listen to it for comedy, information, informative. Sometimes I listen to, hobbies I like outside of politics. But in general, if I listen to a political analyst or somebody talking about the news, I want the truth. I don't want it 5 years later when you know that it's acceptable now, when you knew what it was then. Why would anybody want that? So it's like, be very thoughtful with who you listen to. And, falling in love or, with a news person or a politician because 98% of them are sold out. You think that they're working for you, but what makes them a successful politician and how you climb the rank in news media is being able to finesse both sides, convincing the public. You're like an actor. What is Leonardo DiCaprio? Is he really on a boat? It seems like it. He's a good liar. He's a good actor. I'm not mad at Leonardo DiCaprio. What is acting? Acting is pretending to be someone you're not. Actors are the best liars in the world. They're the smoothest sailors. They can pretend to be anybody, fake an accent. They're good con men. Acting is a cool job, though. I'm not mad at it. I'm just saying. Same with a politician. They're basically like third-rate actors who can't make it in Hollywood. Half of them because they're too ugly to make it in Hollywood. The other half, they're just not that good at acting. They're better at like just sucking and finding a way to make so much donor money that you can't vote them out. But in general, it's like people fall in love with these people and they're like, oh, they really care about me because they wear a cowboy hat. And it's like, no, they're like, even Trump, he's taking hundreds of millions of dollars right now from mega donors, and he's going to do what the donors want. He respects the donors. He respects Dana White, powerful people. He doesn't really respect you because he knows you're not going to do anything because you're enthralled with him and you think that he cares, but he'll care when you realize that he doesn't. And that goes with most politicians. So we'll see what happens. I mean, even with Biden now, it's very hard in politics to stand up to Israel. Like, it's one of the hardest things to do. But in general, it's like he's doing virtually nothing. Israel doesn't listen to him. They don't have to. Biden's a joke to everybody, but he's like now being like, hey, dial it back a little bit. And it's because his base is not going to vote for him. And you could look at that and say, oh, he's caving to Palestine or whatever. But the truth is he's caving to his voters because he needs their votes, because he wants their votes, and he's not going to win an election without their votes. In fact, I think he's probably going to lose the election because he's losing the youth vote. So even though you disagree possibly with those protesters or the left, there's a lesson to be learned there. Why did the Republican Party just send $60 billion to Ukraine and not give you a border wall? Because they hate you. They don't respect you because they don't need to respect you because they have Trump wrangling everybody like a bunch of sheep. They don't have to do anything for the Republican base because this idea that Trump's going to fix it is basically freezing Republicans. Meanwhile, Democrats are out there like, we know both parties suck. We know no one's coming to save us. I'm not justifying their actions, their behavior, or their politics, but there is a lesson to be learned that when you actually care about something and you stand somewhere and say no, politicians have to listen to you over the donors or else they're not going to be there. Trump feels zero pressure to do anything. In fact, he's tweeting about an FBI building. He's like, the FBI needs a new building in DC. Like, could it possibly be more obvious that Trump is fake opposition? Like, you want to build the FBI a new building while they're persecuting you? It's like a low rate play at this point, but people will figure it out in 3 years, just like with the COVID vaccine, just like with the speech laws. I'm trying to be patient this year because when I said all this stuff in 2019, I was right. Now, 5-6 years later, people are figuring it out with the COVID stuff. Now, Andrew Cuomo saying what I said. Chris Cuomo sounds like Joe Rogan and conservatives who are talking about ivermectin. Like, the media is coming out and talking about side effects and vaccines not like having demand. And it's like, the truth will come out eventually. You got to be patient, but I do believe that we can save the country by being ahead of time and not waiting for someone to tell us what to think, just being honest about it. So my opinion, I don't buy the Cuomo brothers. I don't buy the whole media angle on it. The New York Times, they're rolling it out now because they've already made their money. They've already got what they wanted to get. And now it's safe to talk about. I don't trust it. I don't know what their true motives or intentions are, but I do feel like this last week, more has come out about COVID and the vaccine and all that than in the last 2 years. So there's got to be a reason that everyone's talking about it now. I don't trust it. At the end, I want to talk about like a recap on my debate I had. If you didn't watch it, it's very interesting. I had a woman on named Conservative Mama. She's awesome. She's a really nice lady. She is a conservative Christian that is, more of the Zionist mindset when it comes to the Bible. There's a big debate in the Christian world about, is Israel the physical land of Israel? Does it mean Christians in the church? And also the thought process behind the Bible is driving a lot of American policy. It's the reason that a lot of Republicans are prioritizing that over even the American Constitution. So I was glad to have someone debate me and chat about it. It was very friendly. I think got a little bit intense for like a minute, but I don't think I watched it back to some extent. I don't think it was that crazy or that bad. But I'm glad she had a chat about it, and I want to kind of like give my thoughts on it after that. But first, I want to play this clip of Tim Pool. I'll just give you the background of like where this conversation seems to come from. I think he had on Elijah Schaffer on this one. I got to look again. I think it was Elijah that was there. And they were talking about Nick Fuentes. If you guys don't know who Nick Fuentes is, he is a right-wing analyst who I believe got blacklisted in like 2016. They called him anti-Semitic. Ben Shapiro was tweeting one of the anti-Semitism hate speech laws saying you're not allowed to accuse my ethnicity or religion of dual loyalty. That's anti-Semitism. Ben was tweeting this at Nick in 2016, which that all went over my head, but I've seen it recently. Anyway, this dude just got brought back to Twitter. Like Elon is the first person to re-platform him. Like Elon brought Alex Jones back, Owen Benjamin, Lord Loomer, and now he brought back Nick Fuentes, who is like the arch enemy of like Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro. Like they can't stand this guy. They've, as much as they say they want him back on X, I think they've, you know, they're not really, they've not been super open to debating him or even like, you know, giving him any sort of conversation. It's just always like smears and stuff, but it goes both ways. I'm not saying he does the same thing to them, so I'm not playing the victim. It's just trying to paint the picture for people who don't know who this guy is. He's young in his 20s or whatever. Someone had, I think Jake Shields, a UFC fighter, MMA fighter, he said he was going to bring Nick on as a guest. Tim and him had some falling out. I don't care about it. There's a reason I'm playing this clip because it is what it is. But basically, Nick is like a hard person to have on your show. And I'm just going to be honest. If you have Nick Fuentes on your show as a conservative or anyone, here's what's going to happen. And then I'm going to play the clip of Tim pathologically lying about what he says is going to happen, which makes zero sense, which is why I can't stand Tim Pool, because he's just such a phony. He's so sneaky and fake. It's like ridiculous. It's crazy that he even has an audience. But anyway, like, here's the truth. If you have Nick Fuentes on your show, you might lose sponsor money for sure. You're going to get harassed by conservative media. Left-wing and right-wing media are going to come together and try to blame you for everything that he's ever said. So that's the problem that I have. It's like, I don't mind debating or having conversations with people, but now when you have somebody on your show, they try to act like you're that person. You know what I'm saying? Like you are them. Every mistake they've ever made or everything that they've ever said that's edgy is what you said and what you think, and you're them, and they'll try to ruin your life. Like that's just the truth. If you have Nick Fuentes on your show, they will try to ruin your life. They will try to ruin your business. They will harass you probably for the next decade and basically try to make sure that you can never make money in media. So understandably, a lot of Republicans do not want to have this kid on. It's not necessarily because they're afraid of what he's saying or they don't want to debate him. They just don't want to lose everything. He's like kind of like having Alex Jones on in a way, like if you had Alex Jones on your Facebook page, like they might take your Facebook page down. I don't know, I don't know the rules, but certain people have been like crazy blacklisted from more than just media, and everybody is afraid to talk to them because they don't want to lose everything that they've built over one interview, which is totally understandable. It doesn't make it right. You can call somebody a coward, say what you want. I could say it makes sense. I could say I feel the same way in some cases, but whatever you think, I'm just being honest. This is why people don't want to have him on the show. Here's a video of Tim Pool saying the reason that people don't want to have him on the show is because security, you'd have to pay millions of dollars in security. And nothing that Tim makes sense, because he says that Nick's followers will harass you if you talk about him, which probably means they'll harass you if you negatively talk about him. Why would Nick's followers harass you if you're talking positively about him? It doesn't make any sense. So it's like, if you had him on the show, why would they? And he's also talking about him when he's not on the show. So it's like, you're now talking about him not on the show, claiming that his supporters will do stuff that you need security for. How would having him on the show and making his supporters happy mean that you needed security from his supporters? Like, Tim is such a pathological weasel. It's literally fascinating to me. Here's the clip, and I'm going to just say why Tim should just be honest and be like, I don't want to have him on because I don't want to lose sponsors. I don't want to get harassed by all my right-wing friends and be called anti-Semitic and get smeared by the media and lose some business. That's the truth. I'm totally okay with that. You know, that you don't have to have anybody on, but like, listen to Tim just being such an idiot. He's so stupid. It's hilarious. Like, it's funny to me. Let's watch.
You talk to any podcaster and they know the moment you say Fuentes, they're in for a world of hurt because they're going to get attacked relentlessly. And that's why people don't want him on their show.
Just because of ego or what?
No, because Fuentes' followers cause economic damage to businesses that mention his name. Wow. It's not even about whether, like, the moment his name comes up on a podcast, people know it's like, okay, call the security guards. We're going to need 2 extra guys. It's going to cost another $100,000. They're going to be like, if you mention him on the show, I'm going to have to deal with it and call a security guard. We're going to get phone calls. We're going to get emails. And then we're going to have to call the police. Then we're going to have a security guard 24 hours. That's going to cost, like, big shows. If you're talking about 24-hour security this could be millions of dollars. And so a lot of people are just like, it's easy for a smaller YouTuber.
Tim Pool has had on Marjorie Taylor Greene, a sitting congresswoman who's extremely controversial. He's had on James O'Keefe, who's done a lot of undercover journalism. Like, did he have to pay millions of dollars for security for James O'Keefe and Marjorie Taylor Greene? Probably not. He has heavy security anyway. His security is so heavy, they wouldn't even let me go to the podcast when they booked me. I landed to go on Tim's Pool show. They booked me. I could have made it on time. And they said that I wasn't allowed to go to Tim Pool's studio. They basically canceled on me while I was sitting on a plane about to get there and get driven there, because they said security was so deep that if you don't come an hour early, then they won't have you on the show. And I'm like, if that's the case, why didn't you fly me in earlier? If that's your rule, why wouldn't you fly me in earlier? And his booking person's like, oh, I don't know. I've never flown somebody in on the same day. I've only flown them. I always fly them in a day before. And I was like, why didn't you fly me in a day before? I don't understand. Like, if that's your rule, that you have such heavy security that I need to be there an hour early, why in the world would you book me almost the exact time? My flight wasn't delayed 5 hours. It was delayed like an hour or something. I landed at like 7 and the show starts at 8. Like, I could have made the show on time. They just had no interest in bringing me there. They flew me out to go on Tim Pool's show and then sabotaged me. But the point that I'm making is they have heavy security, so heavy that their own guests are not even allowed to go on the podcast if they're not early enough. And mysteriously, they booked me later than they've ever booked me ever, which I think in some ways might have been purposeful, but maybe not. Anyway, so it's like they've had on James O'Keefe. You're like, the truth is, if you have on Nick, you're going to get harassed by the media and conservatives, and you might lose money in business. There's nothing wrong with admitting that. There's nothing wrong with being like, I don't want him on. I don't like him. I don't like him. I don't want him on. I don't want to risk everything for a guy I don't even like. There's nothing wrong with that. But to say it's because you need to beef up millions of dollars of security because you're going to get calls, by his supporters. So you're going to get calls and issues from his supporters if you have them on the show and make them happy, but not if you talk shit about them, which Tim is essentially doing on this show. Like, that's not going to make them mad, but bringing him on the show is going to make them mad. Like, he's just lying. It's just ridiculous. It's like he's had more controversy, or at least like more high profile people on his show, and you don't got to spend millions of extra dollars in security when you already have security. It's like, he's just so fake. I was just like listening to that. It was like, everyone knows he's lying. It's like, that's not why you don't want to have him on the show. Yeah, of course it doesn't make sense. It's like, so at first it's like, you need the security when he's on the show because people hate him, right? Oh no, you need security when he's on the show because his supporters mean you need security. When they're happy that you had him on, they're going to get so mad at you. You need millions of dollars security, but they're not going to get mad when you just talk about him and won't have him on the show. Like, it's like, he's just such a weasel. It's ridiculous. And everybody's like figuring it out. And it's just like, it's hilarious to me. It's like, I just can't deal with the fakeness. Like, I'll be honest, there's people that I don't want on my show because I'm calculating the risk and the reward. It's like, if people have said things that I don't believe in, it's not that I can't talk to them, but it's like, there is a price to pay. The media will definitely take all of the things that people have ever said and say that you've said them. So there's a risk reward with everything. And also, depends who you are, but it's like, do I want to deal with all that? Is that something that I want to deal with? That is the juice worth the squeeze for this? It's like, and then everybody makes these decisions about that. I'm all about being honest about it. It's like, there's people that I know that, like, this is an easy example to make since Alex Jones is turning kind of mainstream now, but like, could I have Alex Jones on my Facebook page? Hasn't he been banned from Facebook? Could I, like, I don't know. I don't know what their policies are. And it's like, if I'm a business and I make a lot of money on Facebook and I need that in order to survive my business, could having Alex Jones on my Facebook page shut my Facebook page down? It could. I wish I had a contact at Facebook, because with all these social medias, I don't even know what their rules are, because the rules don't even make sense. It's like, they'll take away everything for you being right, even though you didn't even break a rule, because their rules say that they could just do whatever they want. So it's like, they're so not transparent with their ideology that it's like everyone's kind of on edge all the time, because we live in a in a country where all of these corporations have insane lopsided fake rules. Like, reporting on pharmaceuticals for 2 years was like the hardest thing to do. Every day I'd wake up wondering, like, am I going to go broke this month? Or I'm not like going to go broke, but it's like, am I going to lose everything every day? I remember a month ago, I was at a conference with my buddy doing some work, like literally like this year. And then I look at my phone and Facebook says, we demonetized you. For what? For a video I did about Kanye West 2 years ago and like Chris Cuomo or something. I was like, a 2-year-old video now bothered you so much? 2 years? I didn't even know it existed. I don't care if you delete it. Nobody's watching it. That bothered you so much that you had to take all my income away from this. And then it's like, there's no one to talk. They gave it back a week later, but I don't even care anymore. Cause I'm like, this is how social media works and I'm just used to it and I don't let it stress me out. But during 2020, of course I was stressing out all the time because they'd take my money away. So long story short, there's a reason that people don't want to have people on the show. Let's just be honest about it. You know what I'm saying? Let's not make up some crazy fake excuse for why you don't want to lose money and lose business. Just be real. I don't understand why people are so like they don't know that everybody's going to know they're lying. It's just so dumb. With that being said, I wanted to talk about the debate real quick that I had yesterday. And someone said that Jason Whitlock's based and Anomaly was talking trash about him. I like Jason Whitlock. I think his content is good. I appreciate it. He was just shitting on me and my hair, so I just made fun of him and called him fat. I don't think it's above the pale. I mean, Jason's a man. He talks about sports. He can handle it. His intro to me was one of the bizarrest things I've ever heard. Like, his intro to me was so douchey and condescending. I like Jason. I think he's one of the people that I like more now. Like, I like Jason. I've reached out and told him, like, keep up the good work. Like, I'm not against Jason at all. I think he's cool. I just like his intro to me was like, he was just like talking to me like I was a little boy, like just making fun of my hair, this and that for like a minute. Like it was like it was worse than like a CNN intro. So it's like, I'm a man. You could talk trash to me. You can make fun of my hair. I'm going to say you're fat because he is. It's like, so I'm a healthy, strong 34-year-old male that's an athlete. I'm more athletic than Jason. I'm in shape. I'm jacked. You know what I'm saying? And you're going to make fun of me, then I'm going to make fun of you. I'm not mad at him, but he is fat and I do have long hair. So it is what it is. With that being said, I actually really do like Jason and, I have nothing against him. I'd love to talk to him again and laugh about this whole thing. No, it's fun. I don't care. I just thought it was actually funny, but to each their own. With the debate yesterday, I'm so glad that she came on because she's super nice and she's I think she means well, absolutely, and I think she could see that in me. So, in general, I think it was very revealing. I think there were a lot of things that a lot of people have never thought about, and I listened back a little bit to it. I'm kind of glad how it turned out because I definitely kept my cool. I was calm the whole time and just trying to state facts and stuff. And I think it's something that people don't think about. There's a lot of things that I'm thinking about now that I notice, like, I don't think a lot of Christians consider the relationship they have with Israel. Like, it's a very bizarre relationship where it's like, at the end times, and I understand, like, the world is bizarre but like in the end times, Christians believe that. And she was saying that, there's basically the Antichrist is going to come back. Israel's going to get destroyed. And then the Jews are going to convert to Christianity and go to heaven. And it's like, they hate that. You think that, it's like, let's just be honest about it. I'm not like, I believe in a religious freedom. I'm not trying to force it on people that don't want it necessarily, although that is like, what some people do. But in general, it's just like hilarious that Christians are like, la-di-da-di-da, like, this is awesome. They love us. They're good. It's so great. And it's like, I mean, kind of, but at the same time, like, once you figure out that, like, see how much people love it. Like that, it's like they like the fact that you have no idea what's going on. The second that you kind of like put things together politically, you're going to get a lot more accusations and you're going to get a lot more people upset. So it's like, your idea of how it's going to end is not their idea how it's going to end. And they don't like that you want to convert them. They consider it hateful and anti-Semitism because they don't want to be converted. They don't want to believe that Jesus was your Lord and Savior. But like Christian Zionists are just like almost completely oblivious. Like they're like, oh, great ally. So then it's like when you point out certain things, they're like, why is that happening? It's like, because they're thinking differently. I don't know. Why is the law different in Saudi Arabia than it is in America? Different religion, different people, different thought process. Like, it's like, it doesn't mean someone's bad. It's just like, how does no one know this stuff? They've never thought about it because they're just like, operating under this text of like, our countries are joined at the hip and that's awesome. And yeah, but eventually it's all going to fall and we're going to go back. And it's like, it's just wild. It was fun to have that chat because like I talk about it by myself all the time. It's nice to kind of test your thought process against someone that completely disagrees with you. I love it. And she was a great guest, super nice, super calm. I appreciate it. I'll read a few comments. I want to keep this under an hour. I think it makes a lot of sense. Someone's talking about the speech law about who killed Jesus. I see this, and I just want to be clear because it's not something I want to talk about all the time, but it's so relevant now in conservative media and everyone's getting it wrong. That's why I feel inspired to talk about it. I'm watching all these employees from the Babylon Bee. They're like tweeting now. He's like, if you think that blank killed Jesus, you're reading it wrong. And it's like, yeah, have that discussion. That's a biblical discussion. You know, you could be like, it was the Romans. It was, have the discussion. I don't care. I don't care what that, you could say it was Christians that did it. You know what I'm saying? Or bad Christians, whatever you want to think it was. And you're entitled to your debate. I'm not going to call you hateful. I'm just going to disagree if I think you're wrong. With that being said, it's like the people at Babylon Bee, it's like the big scoop right now, I'm just being honest, is that the State Department, the House, the Senate, this president, the last president, and the next president all agree that it's hate speech to have one biblical interpretation. So now Bible discussions and interpretations are deemed hate speech. That's the story. You understand? It's like shaming people for having the thought crime that the government is passing is just going to make you more unpopular, make you look sneaky, because it's like, yeah, you could have that debate as a Christian, but the reason everybody's talking about it now is because it's a thought crime being enforced by the State Department, the House, the Senate, the U.S. government. And one side of that biblical discussion is now being deemed hate speech. Like, if you can't be honest about that before you say something, people are not going to like it. And then the people that are being dishonest are going to be like, oh, they're just being hateful. And it's like, because you're being dishonest and it doesn't make it right. It's just like the truth. I follow this guy, Michael Tracy. He's a really good follow if you want a counter perspective to Republicans from someone that's not completely insane. I'm not going to co-sign everything Michael Tracy says, but he's not like a ridiculous leftist where he makes no sense. He's been pointing out recently, like the state of Utah has tweeted out, or the University of Utah has tweeted out that, they're not allowed to do business with any company that boycotts Israel. And he's like, isn't it weird that Utah has this law? Isn't it weird that Kansas has this law? And it's like I think more states than not have a rule that if you want a government contract, not only can you not boycott an Israeli company, but you can't work with any company who does. I'm not asking people to boycott them, but like, isn't it weird in the United States of America that we have speech laws for a country that you can't boycott a country? And this is the gist of the argument that I'm trying to make people understand. This is only going to raise more questions. This is only going to make people not like it more. You got to have self-accountability and you got to talk about this stuff. If you just keep passing these laws while acting like everyone's mysteriously upset while tens of thousands of people are being killed, like it's nuts. Like, people are really losing the PR battle and they're completely oblivious of why. I watched Piers Morgan, who blocked me on Twitter for talking about the COVID vaccine. Piers Morgan was such a little weasel during COVID, such a weasel. But he's doing some good journalism now, some weasel journalism now, whatever. In my opinion, he's doing some of the most interesting content now, even though I don't like him. It is what it is, but I just think it's hilarious he blocked me because I was like, dude, you're so gross. Like, he was shilling the vaccine so hard and trying to shame people who were talking about it. Like, it's disgusting. But anyway, with Piers Morgan, I seen him interview an Israeli spokesperson, like an official Israeli spokesperson. And Piers plays both sides of it to try to do journalism, which is, to be honest, what you're supposed to do. So I don't think he's doing a bad job on this topic. He's showing both sides. But anyway, he asked him, you just told me the Hamas, you knew exactly how many Hamas were killed. What's the civilian casualty? And he didn't know. And Piers Morgan pushed him for 5 minutes. He goes, how do you not know? And he goes, I don't know. Like, so it's like, people can say whatever, like, even if you're the most pro-Israel person in the world, let's be frank, tens of thousands of civilians are dying and Hamas is still not out of power. You could kill 500,000 civilians and Hamas could still be in power. Like, are you going to admit people are going to hate that? And I'm not saying they did that, but it's like, I don't understand any dynamic of it. It's like I read that they want the hostages back, and then they'll make a deal. Then there's a deal for that, but they don't want it. And then they're going to Rafah. Then they're going to Rafah. It's like, I don't, it's a very confusing war, but it's like, they're like, we're telling civilians to leave. We're the most moral army. We're telling them to leave, and then we're going to invade. It's like, this is just my thought process. It's like, if you tell the civilians to leave an area, like, can't Hamas leave? This is just like basic like war thought process. Like, hey, civilians leave. Hamas is just going to stay. They're like, yeah, let's just stay. Blow me up. It's like, probably they're leaving too, no? Like, if you tell civilians to leave, won't Hamas just leave? Or are they just going to sit there and wait to get bombed? I don't know. Like, but like nothing I'm reading is adding up. And I think as crazy as a lot of the left wingers are, that the pro-Israel side, they're getting destroyed in the PR battle, because a lot of their talking points like make zero sense. And it's like, they don't realize what's going on. Even I didn't talk about it yesterday because I don't think it was like relevant to what I was trying to talk about and the conversation. But in general, where it's like her kind of thought process was like, my job is not to judge and, to be peaceful and to love and forgive. And I absolutely believe that's true. But it's like, the side that we're trying to act like is so moral and whatever, like they're killing tens of thousands of civilians and like a lot of kids and a lot of women. So it's like, can the Christian Zionist heart open up for the fact that like tens of thousands of innocent people are being slaughtered? Or do you believe that these people are not innocent, that they're all terrorists? And if you do believe that they're all terrorists, then why are our allies writing op-eds to bring them to the West as refugees? Like, no matter what you believe, none of their talking points make sense, because they're just, in order to take that stance, in my opinion, you either need a huge bias, either an ethnic bias or a religious bias, a Christian or a Judaism, to some extent. And that's, I'm not saying for sure, but it's like, in order to be on that side, you need a massive bias. And that massive bias needs to be so strong that you're not critically thinking about it. It's like thinking about like the vaccine's American, the virus is China, America beats China. Like, that's the level of thinking you have to be to know, not like, you have to be like completely oblivious of like how everything's working and just only believe the one side. Me, I don't believe any side. Like, I'm not out here sharing clips of Palestine. I'm not saying nothing's happening, but how do I know? I'm not trying to like push war propaganda. I'm not pushing war propaganda. Some accounts on both sides, it's like every story, and I'm like, I'm just trying to be reasonable and think about it. But the more I think about it, I'm like, one side's losing the PR battle, and they're totally oblivious of why. And then instead of realizing why they're losing the PR battle, they just keep doubling down. It's like the Babylon Bee. I don't care what they think or if they want to agree with left or right, but like the Babylon Bee just keeps digging their opinions in a bigger hole, because they're missing the whole point of what people are talking about and just trying to straw man every argument and then like not acknowledge the reality of the situation. And it's like, people don't like it. And then when people don't like it, they're just like, oh, people are just randomly hating me. It's like, Twitter, people are gonna hate you. There's people in the comments right now that don't like me. They're literally talking shit to me like right now. Do I think they're right? No, but like that's the internet. I don't know what to tell people. Like, it sucks. I wish everyone was nice. I don't like to see people not like me, but like, I don't know. It's not exclusive to like you because of this. It's like, it's just unfortunately the way the internet works. Like, everybody has an opinion, and some people are pissed off. Like, it just is what it is. I don't know. I wish I could change it too, but I'm not like, oh, the person in the comments hates me, I must be right. It's like, I'm right because I'm right, not because of what they said. Like, I'll read a few more, and then I'm gonna keep this under an hour. Let's do it. It's hard to do, but someone said, I thought they were a satire account. They do great satire work. It's just their CEO and their head editor is, they're basically trying to take the Jeremy boring Daily Wire stance in this culture battle, and it's not only the wrong opinion, like the last debate I had, like, that's how a debate would go with Ben Shapiro. Like, there's a reason they don't want to debate Candace Owens. There's a reason they haven't debated anybody on this topic for 4 or 5 years. And here's the problem, I believe, with their side of the debate is it does well when it's in the shadows. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't do well when there's a spotlight on it because they're not right and they're not being honest. So like, there's a reason no one knew about the speech loss from 2019, 2018 to 2024. It's because it was in the shadows and nobody wanted to report on it. Now that it's in the front, it's like, yeah, everybody disagrees with it because it's wrong. It's anti-American. Of course it's going to be unpopular. That's why they keep it in the shadows for 4 years. Because when it comes out of the shadows, it's like, that's wrong. And everybody knows it. It's the same thing about this debate. It doesn't mean that Ben can't think this way and Ben can't like that country and you can't like that country. That's not what I'm saying. It's just the talking points don't stand up to basic scrutiny or basic common sense, which is why for 4 or 5 years, these thought processes were more popular because there was no massive war bringing a spotlight to it. Now that there's a war, there's a massive spotlight on Israel and Palestine. There's a massive spotlight on the speech laws. There's a massive spotlight on the narratives and the people pushing those narratives. And it's like, they're not good. They're not the best talking points, So it's like, it's a topic that does better when no one's looking at the countries, because it's like, once people think about it, you're not going to get everybody on your side. But I know personally, there's conservatives that I know that they've always been conservative on almost every issue, but like more than half of the people that I've seen, they're not like super boomer Zionist pro-Israeled out. They're pro-America, and they're analyzing the situation and being like, this is not a fair deal. Doesn't mean I hate them, just not a fair deal. And then the left, they didn't care about this for years. I mean, they were all BLM. Now all of them care about this topic all of a sudden, So it's like, it's better it's better not in the forefront, because once it comes to the forefront, it's just simply not popular. And I believe that it's not all hate. Yeah, some people suck. Like, I'm not going to justify people that suck. Some people suck. Their ideas suck. Their opinions suck. Macklemore's making a song saying AIPAC and white supremacy. It's like, you might like the AIPAC line, you might not like the other line. I'm not here to justify everyone's opinions and their politics, because they're not mine. I can tell you though, self-awareness would go a long way. Being honest would go a long way. But I think there's certain, a lot of people, they don't feel the need to be honest because they're going under this narrative of like, I am the most honest, we are the most moral, and if you disagree, you're being hateful. And it's like, yeah, that's not going to be popular. Well, let's get a speech law for it all over the world. Also not going to be popular. Like, that's a good strategy to prove that you're being totalitarian. But if you want average people to like you more because of that, that's a crazy way to do it. And it's a terrible strategy. I don't know. But it is what it is. I think and even I'll say this too before I leave. It sucks because the average citizen in America of any ethnicity, but especially some, they feel more uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable because I feel like people hate me now, right? It's uncomfortable because everybody's fighting and this is happening all over the place. And it's like, it sucks. Absolutely. It sucks for me. It sucks for you. It sucks for everybody. But here's the thing. It's because America's funding 2 wars. If America wasn't funding these wars, it wouldn't be uncomfortable for Americans. It's uncomfortable because we're funding the Ukraine and Russia war. I don't believe it's a moral war. We're funding Israel. I'm sorry, I don't believe it's all moral there either, to be honest. So it's like, yes, it's very uncomfortable in America now for everybody. That's what happens when tens of thousands of civilians are being killed in a foreign country, and Ukraine is so desperate, they're losing the war so bad that they're now recruiting criminals. Yeah, it freaking sucks. We're funding the losing side of one war while the media tells you they're winning, that's getting decimated, and then we're funding the winning side of the other war, which has astronomical casualty rates and civilian rates that are hard to comprehend in this modern era. You could justify it if you want, but the thing is, it's just yeah, it sucks for Americans. And it also sucks because the border's open. And it also sucks because there's so much tension already here. So it's like, if you want it to stop sucking in America, you got to end the wars. But nobody wants to end the wars. So it's going to suck. It's like, I don't want to end the war. Okay, then what you're going to get is tension. What you're going to get is people upset. What you're going to get is a failed nation. Once the wars stop and a president closes the border and we have a real country, then the tension will lower again for everyone. But until then, it isn't, that's what happens when you fund multiple wars. It's like being at peacetime or at wartime. We're at wartime, so, and we're completely powerless to that until enough, I guess, maybe not. I guess if you express your opinion enough, then politicians are forced to at least have some sort of thought process about it. I'd love to talk, but I said I'm going to keep this under an hour, and I almost never do. So I'm going to do that. God bless you guys. I'll be back with more videos soon. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. Let me know in the comment section, and I will be back perhaps later today, perhaps tomorrow, perhaps not, perhaps Monday. We'll see. Hey, what's going on, my friends? Just a few ways to stay in touch and support if you'd like to. The first way is dreamrare.com. We have blue beanies, black beanies, pink hats, other colored hats, freedom versus tyranny shirts, stay blessed long sleeve, God is great long sleeve, and lots of more cool items coming soon.